Verse 13, you came down also on Mount Sinai, and you spoke with them from heaven, and you gave them, watch these descriptions, just ordinances and true laws and good statutes and commandments. God came down, he met with Mo on Mount Sinai, and he gave him the 10 commandments. And the law that God gave, it was a just ordinance. It was a true law. It was good statutes and good commandments. Psalm 19 verse 7 says, the law of the Lord is perfect, converting the soul. The law that God gave on Mount Sinai, it's a perfect law. Now, that law, as perfect as it is, it could never save us because that was never the point of the law. The law is perfect in what its job is, and its job is to show us that we need saving. It's to show us that we fall short of God's standard. Verse 14, you made known to them your holy Sabbaths, and you commanded them precepts and statutes and laws by the hand of Moses, your servant. God, you revealed your law to them, your standard. You made known to them Sabbath days and your feasts and ways that they could worship you and be different as your people, and your precepts and your statutes and your laws. And by the hand of Moses, your servant, you revealed this to them. Verse 15, you gave them bread from heaven for their hunger, and you brought them water out of a rock for their thirst. And you told them to go in to possess the land which you had sworn to give them. God, your people were hungry, so you fed them. You gave them bread from heaven. Your people were thirsty, so you gave them water from a rock. And God, you provided for them in the wilderness during those 40 years of wandering. And then you told them to go in and to possess the land that you promised way back in the day to Abraham, which you swore to give to them. God gave them manna, bread from heaven, when they were thirsty. God's people are thirsty. God goes, or hungry. Thank you. Sorry, I'll catch on here in a little bit. God's people are hungry, and they go, God, we're hungry. And he goes, let me feed you with bread from heaven. God's people are thirsty, and he goes, let me give you water from a rock. And he miraculously provides for them in this way for 40 years straight. And verse 16 says, but they and our fathers acted proudly. They hardened their necks. They did not heed your commandments. You would think you would obey the God who brings bread from heaven every single morning. You would think that you would obey the God who supernaturally caused water to gush out of a rock when you were thirsty. You think you would do everything that God would tell you to do. But even though all of this, even though all of God's goodness and all the giving that God has done in these above verses, but his people, they were proud. They hardened their necks, they stiffened up their necks, and they did not heed. They didn't pay attention to God's commandments. And you read this, you go, wow. But then you realize that God's word is like a mirror, and you go, wow, this is us. We're just as arrogant, we're just as prideful, we're just as messed up, that God can be so good to us, yet we can be proud in our own self, we can be hard-necked towards his things, and we can not want to listen to what he has to say to us.